if you take an electron, okay, it takes 900 and weigh their mass. And if you take a neutron and weigh their mass, you will find out that the mass of 918 pairs of electrons is equivalent to the mass of a neutron, the equal weight. Now, when a neutron is losing an electron, becomes a proton, the weight of the mass of the neutron becomes less by the mass of one electron. And if you take the photon and you compare the photon to the electron, you find the same conclusion. But since the universe was formed from free energy, scalar waves, which moves through time and space in 3 dimensions, that's in a vortex, inverting vortex. And that's the imprint of the universe. That's the signature of the universe. And you find that imprint everywhere, regardless where you go, on the galaxies, on the black holes, on the human DNA, on the sea animals, because seawater picks up a lot of free energy, and you constantly running into the imprint of the universe, which is the free energy moving through time and space in a vortex fashion. And because the free energy which is produced by the during the Big Bang, and this free energy where everything is coming from, because the whole universe was produced from them. All the suns and stars, all the galaxies, all the matter formation came from this free energy, and that free energy breathed into the photons. And the 918 pairs is the magic number, which if you check the mass ratio between the particles, you find out that it's for real. Beside that, also when the free energy braided into 918 pairs into photon, that's the way light was born. Now, when you want to take light apart, you have to start breaking up the wavelength of the photons. And this is what light crystal does. The first time that we are able to take a photon and split the wavelength and changing the wavelength of the light, because you're turning it back to free energy, to the same particles, the free energy particles. And actually, the photon is nothing more but a static field. Now, I made my first breakthrough in the early 1960s when I discovered the static field deriving it from the atmosphere. And that's when I developed my first cold fusion process, which was pulling the energy out of the atmosphere, free energy. There was no energy input, and we're producing enormous amount of heat, enormous amount of hydrogen, and a byproduct, the pentoxyhydrate, which is space dust. They used to call it space dust because it's weird, the way it looks like. And it contains half isotopes, and it all has been produced from free energy. And the free energy in the reactor, special reactor which I built, you could see the scroll waves imprinted in a superconductive media. And that's the properties of a superconductive media. When you imprint a field, it will stay there and keeps up moving and moving and moving. You can observe it all day long. And that's the first time I discovered the scroll waves, actually seeing scroll waves implanted into superconductive field. And the result of that was an issued patent. By the way, that patent, which has been ignored by the world, it should have been taught in every school in the country in the past 30 years, and everybody ignored it. And now they try to discover it. Even our government tried to discover it, and they keep bothering me now. They want to work with me on that area because they find it very exciting to get into anti-gravity and all the research they're doing. But basically, that's the short story.
Thanks very much, George, and I hope you have stories to tell for lifetimes and lifetimes to come. God bless.
God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Merkel. I'm enjoying your explanations very much. I have 3 questions. The first one is regarding scars. You talked a bit about the scar tissue. I was wondering about healing scar tissue a long time after the surgery, like 20 years after surgery. Is there a chance of regenerating or improving scar tissue?
Well, you know, there is, and some preliminary studies indicate if you inject under the scar tissues, actually you have to inject live pistil under it.
Okay, thank you.
It's basically, live pistil does proliferate any genetic material and stimulates the cell growth, providing both the energy and the components.
And the second question is about fingertips. You mentioned them this morning. If you've lost a small amount of fingertip, can that be regenerated? Or other limbs? Or?
Well, I grow organs in vitro, but we haven't done anything in vivo. And we were talking about that actually you can grow even directly from the transfer RNA or from the DNA. So if the cells are there, it's possible, based on preliminary documentary I'm working on, and I'm going to publish that also, both on video and books, of growing whole life form. And actually, when you grow the whole life form directly from the DNA, you can see the different parts of growing and forming, which is so exciting because the first time we can see a life replication from a DNA entirely different from our concept. And you can grow a whole life form directly out of the DNA. Now the first one was the Chondriana, but now we're getting a little bit more into it as we're learning more about the process. But as far as experimenting of growing back organs, it will be feasible. The techniques to what we have to develop how to do it. If you have some cells left over from a particular organ, you should be able to replicate it because the information is all there.
And finally, would you talk to us a little bit about the use of your products in emotional and even mental disorders?
Well, we have a lot of letters coming from everywhere, from all over the world, and thousands of them. And a lot of people, especially people with HIV, they write in that they haven't been restored physically, but they also has been restored mentally. We have also one case where schizophrenic has been restored to normal, 19-year-old girl. She was also alcoholic. And we have manic depression restored back to normal. So we're getting a lot of sporadic reports, but still we will have to do a more thorough, more scientific clinical study on it. Mental capacity is no question about it, that it will increase. It's basically the adenosine guanosine phosphate is act as a stimulator for all the proliferation of all the cells, whether it's brain cells or tissue cells or organ cells. It doesn't really matter. And also the gene production. It's like the cyclic AMP, which is directly responsible, and GMP. These are directly responsible for as a stimulating effect on of the genes to reproduce. So there's a lot more than we can digest at this moment. Actually, what I'm looking for, once this whole technology gets into the hands of the scientific community and thousands of professionals gets on it, you will see really progress, because everybody in his own field can go in and explore the limits of how far this will take us. And after all, we're all coming from the adenosine guanosine phosphate, the adenine and guanine, the beginning of life. So we're reproducing the primordial soup, what we had at the very beginning of life formation of this planet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Doctor, I'd just like to know if the oral ingestion of light crystals would help reduce high blood pressure.
No, contrary. the oral consumption of live crystal will reduce the blood pressure. First of all, it will reduce the cholesterol, just to drink by itself. We have many cases reported and clinical studies firmly documenting that being on the live crystal, it will reduce the cholesterol to normal level, and the normalization of the blood pressure coming down to normal levels automatically follows.
What about the reduction of angina attacks?
The angina attacks definitely not only reduction, but it should eliminate it, because angina attacks is related to the plugged arteries, and once the circulation is restored, as the plaques and cholesterol removed from the blood vessels, then the angina pain should completely disappear, and all the side effects which is brought on by plugged arteries should disappear and normalize, because you have a normal, healthy blood flow. And not only that, but the heart muscles should be rebuilt and strengthened and become normal.
Very good. And just one final question. Would the use of liquid crystals help in reducing the potential for Alzheimer's?
Again, we have some reports, not in writing, but we have a product where we combine the live crystal with ginkgo. Now, our process lends itself not process or extract valuable remedies from herbal compounds. In other words, you can take the Chinese traditional medicine and you can modernize them. You can extract the active ingredients, purify them to a high degree, and make them injectable. So they're much more effective than just drinking the herbal tea, because every time you make that herbal tea, you're getting a very small fragment of the ingredients out of that leaves. This was the reason we took the ginkgo and combined the ginkgo with live crystal. And when this was given to people who had a problem of a similar sort, they recovered from it very efficiently, and we have some pretty good clinical data forthcoming in the very near future on it. We already know the verbal reports, but we're going to have written reports on it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, George.
Bye.
Thanks for being here and for all your great explanations.
Quite
I have
welcome.
learned so much today. I've appreciated that and your patience. And unfortunately, I represent a few people and have a few questions. But there's one thing here that nobody has asked about yet. And I've talked to a person on the phone. His wife is severely afflicted by silicone poisoning. And he said, if you can tell me if life crystals will detach the silicone from, I think it's the DNA that it attaches to, I'll make you rich. What that would be fun, but I'd like to be able to help this man because he's connected to that whole community. Has anybody done anything with silicone poisoning yet?
No, we haven't done anything silicone poisoning, but we have some clinics who are doing clinical study with great success of restoring the breast of women who had silicone implants. And as you know, when sometimes, you know, it just everything begins to decay in there. So when they open up, sometimes they don't have to open because it's already oozing and open. But they go in with live crystal and they restore it and to perfect health. They have to rebuild it from inside out, and there's great success reported by this very reputable clinic, the restoration of the breast from people who had silicone implants and got into complications.
Okay, then does it also help to detox the silicone out, or we don't know about that yet?
We don't know yet.
Okay,
No.
and what about repairing the nerve endings?
Well, that's repairing nerve endings
That's part
is
of the
very
restoration.
simple. Yes, but you know, I documented on the videotape called the tip of the iceberg. We grow the neuron fibers and we grow the nerve endings via live crystal. That's one of the things which, especially you know, after surgery, the feelings comes back very fast, the numbness goes away, and everything, just the whole recovery is speed up tremendously by spraying it locally. You don't have to inject to it, just spray it locally with the topical on the surface.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Several people have asked questions about the eyes and things, but one thing that hasn't been addressed was cataracts. I don't understand the nature of cataracts, and I don't know if it's a disease or it just needs to be restored. Do you have any information on that?
No, we don't have any information. The only information we have that we have cases when the retina has been completely restored, and some diabetics and some with pigmentosis, they regain their eyesight. So some work has been done. But all of these areas, just treating like 5, 10, or 20 people on specific, it's not enough for conclusion. We have to treat hundreds of people.
Right.
Like in case of breast cancer, we treated so many people. I mean, the clinics treated so many people that we can safely say, yes, it's possible to have a 90 to 96% remission in breast cancer.
Can the life crystals be put directly in the eyes?
Yes, you can, but again, you're taking a chance when you have a lot of makeup on your eyes and you spray the life crystal into your eyes. So depending what you carry in with it. Otherwise, after shower, it's absolutely safe. When I use the lotion on my face and my bald spots, I always spray it into my eyes, and I have no problem with it.
All right. What about breathing it in your lungs with a vaporizer for people who have very, very bad asthma? Is that okay? That's not okay?
Yeah, some people do it.
Some people do
You see,
it?
we cannot recommend it. We cannot tell, because every time you do that, then you run into the regulatory, agencies and FDA problems. So we can't really tell people what to do. But a lot of them are taking in inhalator, and they inhale the life crystal. So there's no problem with it, because first of all, it's sterile and it's pure, the purified one. We're not talking now the nutritional supplement, because the nutrition supplement is not purified. I wouldn't recommend anybody spray that into their lung.
Thank you. When you send a letter to Mexico, some people are going to send away from the Condriana, and you're sending the letter. Do you need to put the doctor's name and address in that letter?
Yes, you have to identify your doctors who's going to administer it to you, otherwise they won't supply you.
All right.
And then the doctor should get a copy of that letter so that he's protected too.
Okay. What about brainstem injuries and people who are quadriplegics?
Well, we haven't had much experience with it. We have a couple of physical damage. They're wheelchair bound, and they're coming around very nicely. Recently has been treated, some of them also by Dr. Sanchez in Mexico, in Juarez, Mexico.
Okay, and I have one last question. Since you feed your kids life crystals and they're getting so healthy, have you ever given your children Condriana?
No, my children didn't have any Condriana because they didn't needed it.
Okay.
However, they're getting life crystal. But both my wife and myself, we had Condriana, and we have a Condriana baby because my wife conceived after we took the Condriana, and my wife also took the life crystal during pregnancy. But we also have several other couples who could not conceive before. One particular one had herpes, the man, and the wife had a cyst in the uterus, so she couldn't conceive. They both went on Condriana, they both recovered, and they both conceived, and they had a beautiful baby girl, 8.5 pounds in September. Ours was born in December. That was the second Condriana baby. There's 3 of them we know already, people who took Condriana, and they have babies, and the baby's very healthy, very strong. And what we also experienced, and my wife experienced, that the baby was much stronger right from the beginning, started moving and turning around much sooner, and also came earlier. And all the other ones, they came earlier, 2-3 weeks earlier. So they're very good, healthy babies. Since then, a lot of couples who could not conceive, and they went on life crystal, and their baby to conceive 2-3 months later, because it's basically restoring and rejuvenating the effect of rejuvenating the sex cells and the reproductive cells. One thing I think maybe it's worthwhile to mention here that people who are on Kandriana, they will have, I'm sorry, not Kandriana, people who are on live crystal, first, they have more increased primordial cell production, but also all the cells will be stronger. And therefore, a male sperm can stay in the woman long enough to wait for the eggs to come in and get pregnant. And we have some evidence to that.
Wow. I think I'm going to end on that one. Thank you very much,
George.
George.
You can't go by the calendar when you use live crystal.
Good afternoon, George. My name is, sorry. Good afternoon, my name is Daryl. I'm from Lethbridge, Alberta. I feel very privileged to stand here and speak with you. Most of the questions I had have been answered. And I'd like to thank all of you for the quality of your questions. They've been fantastic, and so have the answers.
Thank you.
I just have a few here. One, a few less, yes. One of those questions was for the learning disabled and retarded children and people. Has there been any study done in regards to this?
Yes, in some extent. As you know that we Americans sprayed the poppy fields down where the Mayans live in Mexico with paraquat, DDT, and pesticides. As a result, is an epidemic down there, children with birth defects. The digestive system is shot. They're having seizure and epilepsy. And these are young children. At 13 years old, they look like 5. They cannot develop because the digestive system is shot. The organs can develop, the brain not can develop. And we treated 8 of these children with live crystal, and with all of them, it was very successful. And one of the report and the picture is in the book, in the yellow book, no, rather the blue book. And this little girl was 8 years old and had 200 to 400 seizures per month. And she could not walk straight. She couldn't keep her balance. And they took her all over the country to all the famous clinics, and everybody gave up on her. She went on live crystal, and she completely recovered. She went on last Christmas, and by the end of January, her seizures stopped. She doesn't have any more seizures, and his condition is normal, and she's walking rope. We videotaped her that before she couldn't walk, and now she's walking rope. She's completely recovered, and she doesn't have any more seizures. We have another little girl, Minneapolis, Minnesota, again, just drinking of live crystal, and her organs did not develop, and she was the 13 and looked like 5. And 2 years ago, because she was one of the first started using live crystal about 3 years ago, she went back to school and started developing, and all his epilepsy stopped, and he's back to normal. So we have evidence that dramatic changes takes place in the restoration of the conditions, both organs and also the brain. But I explained earlier that the live crystal is depolarizing water, and that can explain. This is what we think. That's the best evidence we have, that once you depolarize the water and you're forming a smaller water jacket around the potassium sodium ions, so they can get into small plug passages, or you can increase the number of ion flow across the passages, septums, and microtubules. You're reestablishing the conductivity for nerve impulses, and you're restoring the damage in case of, or they become normal. They can function normally in case like these little children who has seizures. We also had some stroke victims with traumatic recovery from injectable live crystals. In 3 months, they regained the complete mobility of their arms, and the face everything become normal. And after 3 months, you couldn't tell that the person had a stroke. Now, we didn't have too many, just a few of them, but the results were positive.
You seem very strong to do with brainstem or nerve disorder regeneration.
Well, regeneration, we see that when you use it in vitro, and you can see how fast you can restore and grow to any part of the brain, from the neuron fiber, neuron endings, the brainstem, the different cells, motor cells, astrocytes. If you administer the proper way, they will do the same thing in vivo. And this is where the big the work which really have to be done. And this is where we need the most help to get more clinic, more doctors, more professionals involved, and make thorough clinical study and finding out exactly which is the best way to apply live crystal. Some cases locally, some cases intravenously, some cases intramuscularly, some cases orally, and the amount of dosage you're administering, all the different conditions. And this is, we are right in the middle of it to try to find out the speediest and the most efficient way to apply it. So we're still on the learning curve. But in spite of it, that we made tremendous progress in 3 years.
Sounds very good. Thank you for that question. What else do I have here? You had something, you said something about for people with, trying to think of the disorder here, muscular dystrophy. You hadn't had too many reports on that, have you?
We have an 8-year-old boy with muscular dystrophy only from live crystal brain. The protein production got restored, all the symptoms reversed, and he lost her nails, and even all the nails grew back, beautiful nails. So the protein production is back to normal, and only from the drink.
Is the curvature of the spine
It's completely restored.
restored?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Now we also know that live crystal restores the myelin sheath,
Yes, that's
because
must
we
for
had
the
a
MS.
lot of clinical data.
Does that have to be injected to do that, or can it be done orally?
Intravenous injection.
Okay. The lifespan of the crystal once it's in your bloodstream, and how often does it need to be maintained?
The live crystal goes into bloodstream, you're going to use it up, because it's the building blocks of our DNA. It's the building blocks are our all genetic material, including your enzymes. So you're using it up. So as long as it's in your body, it keeps the water depolarized. Of course, that really stimulates the genetic process. Has a lot of different benefit, but you're using it up, so you have to take new ones in.
That's different
Because
than...
we use it every day. Like normally, the mitochondria is producing your ATP, and we're supplementing that ATP. And of course, half of your mitochondria is degenerated or not functional. Matter of fact, half your organs, because all the pollutants we're taking in and the type of environment we live in, they cannot function properly. And all the sectors of the cell, that's the way cells are dying when they're aging, because everything breaks down. So all of that is reversed. And of course, in the process, you're using it up, so you have to replenish it.
This isn't the case with chondriana then? Once it's in there.
Chondriana is a different story. Chondriana, when you take chondriana, if you're perfectly healthy, some people take it for prevention and they take a couple of shots and that's all they need. But if somebody has a disease and they take a treatment, you always have to keep in mind that normally when you're absolutely healthy, there's two armies in your body: viruses and bacteria and immune cells. the war is going on every second, every minute in your body, which is enables to live, you to live, because your immune system constantly have to kill bugs in your body. And that's just part of our life. That's the way we are made up. Now, if your immune system breaks down and the virus or the bacteria or the disease moves in and takes over, don't forget, they multiply. They're spreading all over your body to take you over and destroy you. Now, you're putting in a few Chondriana, you know, it's like taking a few soldiers into the war zone. You need an army. So you have to build up the Chondriana in your system to match that army of viruses or diseases what's spreading in your body, because you have to counter them. There's a big war is going to take place there. Now, this is why you have to have enough injection of Chondriana that the proliferation of the Chondriana will overtake the proliferation of the disease. And then they take over the enemy and they destroy it. And after that, they move into your lymph channels, the lymph system, and they will stay there, and they will just patrolling through your lymph system when you need it again, and they will come out. But you see, it's a different story when you are already loaded with the disease. You have to bring in enough army to do it. Now, you cannot do it at once, because if you would bring it at once, there would be a tremendous clash and tremendous casualties, tremendous toxicity from all the dead bodies, and your organs cannot handle it. So you have to do it gradually. And this is why it's very important that it's done by clinics, by doctors, and they're monitoring the functions of the organs so that it can get rid of the toxins, so the liver function is normal, and the liver can handle all those dead bodies and toxins, and the kidney and all the filtering organs. And that's the way you have to look at the whole treatment overall.
Could I please have the name of your manuals that you're showing us so I could order
I
them?
have the yellow manual is the Life Crystal. It's 180 page, contains about 70 pictures. It's part 1 and part 2. It's very comprehensive over Life Crystal and Chondriana. Then we have a clinical data book which we're collecting the clinical reports, and we upgrade it from time to time. We have 2 new books coming out. It's not going to be cheap because it's 500 picture documentary. Cost us $40,000 just for the pictures. And that's coming out. The first, I have one copy here, the blue. There's about 250 pictures in there, and the part 2 is going to be printed next week.
How much do you figure they'll run?
$69, the soft cover per book.
Per book.
Yeah. We're going to print that professionally into textbook and distribute it to libraries and universities. That will be probably selling $180 per hardcover.
The soft cover are spiral bound like that?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much,
You're quite
Dr.
welcome.
Merkel.
Beg pardon? The part 1 is already ready. Part 2 is going to be ready next week. It's 500 pictures altogether. It's an extension to Chondriana. It goes far beyond Chondriana. Actually, that book is going to show you multi-strand DNA. Very interesting, because the difference between multiple-strand DNA and single-strand DNA, we're producing our single-strand DNA in the forbidden city in our nucleus. And then when we produce enough genetic material into the nucleoplasm, then the nucleus begins to divide and the cell begins to divide. And with the multistrand DNA, it's exactly opposite. The DNA lives outside the cell and loops, and from each loop, a cell will form. And that will be part of the second book.
Dr. Merkel, thank you very much for being here. I have really learned a lot, and I believe I've been blessed to come in contact with you and the other affiliates that I've come in contact in the last, say, 6 to 8 months. The products have done a lot for me. I have several different conditions, but I would like to touch base on 3 conditions that I haven't heard discussed here today. And one is that I have a pigment problem, vitiligo, and I wondered if there was any reports that you have on that product or that condition.
I don't know exactly what type of pigment problem you have, but we had
No.
some people who had some pigment problem on the skin, and it was used successfully.
And how did you use
The
it?
spray and the injection.
Okay. Also, I happen to have Sjogren's syndrome, which is involving the saliva glands to the body that helps digest your food and so forth. And I was wondering if you've had any studies done with people with this type of condition.
No, we haven't. But generally, if there's deficiencies and the cell's still there, the live crystal should help to proliferate it.
Okay, and would that be the best solution to go with the injections?
Yes.
Okay. Also, if you have irritable bowel or colitis, is there anything that you know that
Not
they have used?
with live crystals. There is one product which I told you came out from the cold fusion process, pentoxyhydrate, and that's being used for colitis, and also they're using it through colonics. They rinse up the colonics. And that product contains 86% oxygen. It's hydroperoxy groups, HO2. It's a very specific giant ring structure which is balanced with 6% protonic hydrogen, H+. And when the singlet oxygen is released, then the free radicals will also release, but the free radical will react with the H+ and form water. And that was one of the reasons the product was cleared for sale by the FDA in 1973. It's a very safe way of using oxygen. But it has a healing effect. The product has 1,500 square meter per gram surface area, 10 times more than the smallest particle known. The product is manufactured within the domain of the crystals. And it's a very unique process. It's a very high activity against Pseudomonas, both gram-negative and gram-positive. Extremely effective against E. coli. Like a tablespoon taken internally, it will knock out the worst kind of diarrhea in 10 minutes. And it will heal any wound or any lesion which doesn't want to heal, including infected diabetic ulcers within days. But that it's a different product. It has nothing to do with live crystal.
And what was that product again?
Pentoxyhydrate.
Okay.
It was classified in 1974 because it's instantaneously neutralizing any gas, including nerve gas. But it was declassified later on.
Where would that be available at this time?
That's available, ordering it from me directly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Also, on skin cancer, would you suggest the life crystals being sprayed on the skin cancer?
Not really. On skin cancer, melanoma, they spraying, giving intravenously and also injected under the skin. We have a very interesting case in Juarez, Mexico. Dr. Villapando took a woman who was sent home from the state hospital to die. Half of her face was missing, the ear dropped off, and half the scalp was missing, practically, not the scalp, but the scalp. The cancer either way, melanoma. And she went, and Dr. Villapando was taking a combination treatment of pentoxyhydrate and live crystal and Candriana. And she's restored her face and her scalp. And she took a week and went back to the hospital, and they thought that she was a ghost.
Wonderful.
that was another reason why the recent contract we signed in Mexico, that they found out this patient and another patient who've been treated with the military hospital. That really triggered the group which started this major program in Mexico, spending $30 million to prove live crystalline chondrion and have it approved by next spring. And the first country